Hi, everybody. This is Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, joined by my dear friend and colleague from the Spun.com, editor and publisher, the great Matt Hladek. Matt, first of all, I can't believe it. Summer's we're just barely into summer, but man, camps start this month. It's exciting time of year, isn't it?
It is. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to say it's July. Training camp will be starting in a couple weeks. Um, and we'll be right back into the daily grind of keeping up with what's going on around the league, what's going on with the Raiders.
It amazes me how fast the season go. It always used to seem the season went so fast and the off season was so slow. And maybe it's just because I'm getting older, but man, it seems like the season's fast and then the off season's fast. I mean, it literally seems like we just got back from the Super Bowl and here we are already getting ready for camp. We started a series last week going through looking at some positions, and we're going to come back to those next week because I really want to get into there are four really big position battles. Now, there are more than these four, but there are four really big ones that I want to dig in with you today on the Raiders coming into the 23 training camp. And the first is guard. Now, I want to talk about, I think Dylan Parham is pretty much solidified. He's got his job. He had a really good rookie year. He played really well. I don't think his job is up for contention. But you come over to Alex Barr's side, and Alex, when healthy, played really good. Did he have some mistakes? Yeah. And I always laugh because we don't attack fans in this podcast, but they'll want to, when you say somebody played good, they'll send you a video of somebody beating them. Everybody in this league
Everybody
gets
loses
beaten.
reps. Yep.
Yeah. Everybody does because everybody's good. But you look at Alex, and they were very happy with his production. Josh Jacobs loved them. Um, did he lose some reps? He sure did. So did everybody else. But he's a guy that played really well for a rushing title winner. And then, interestingly enough, they go out though and bring in a Greg Van Roten, and Greg is a solid guy. He's healthy all the time. He's very productive. These two are going to have a battle. I think they both make the roster, but I think there is a battle there. I think Bars has the inside edge because he's the guy coming back. They know what he did last year. They know about the Russian title, but I think Roten's going to have every chance to beat him. That's going to be a position battle I'm interested in watching. Your thoughts?
Sure. And Alex Bars, they only have him under contract through this season. But you would think, I mean, just going off the way football is and the way that the way organizations kind of approach things, I would think that the Raiders are hoping that Alex Bars wins that battle to start and plays well. He started 14 games last year, only 27. Again, he's a pending free agent, so it's not like they have him locked up long term. But if he plays well and it becomes a reliable piece, then he's somebody that maybe you could sign for a 3 or 4 year deal, and you have a building block type player. Greg Van Roten has obviously played a ton of football in his career, the NFL level. He's bounced around with the Jets and with the Bills and a couple other teams. So he has experience. He's seen a lot and can handle uh, what's thrown at him whenever he comes into a game. To me, looking at it, like those type of guys, those guys that have been around the block, they're vets. They are the guys that you want to have quality depth. And if they have to start to fill in for somebody or someone gets hurt, you have no problem putting them in there and they're capable. But you would rather see the younger player kind of seize the moment and the ascending player, so to speak, take that position. So if I'm had to guess, I'm thinking that the Raiders are hoping Alex Bars wins that job with Greg Van Rote behind him and being able to fill in for him or Dylan Parham or elsewhere on the line.
Well, I can tell you right now, I think they want Alex to win. It's why I said I think he's got the inside edge. But to add a Van Roten who can play in so many different places, that's a really key cog to pick up. He's a guy that if an Andre James were to go down injured, you can slide Dylan Parham over, put Van Roten at guard. He's so versatile. He adds at that interior offensive line, he adds a lot of parts. He's going to be a really good.
I want to correct myself. I'm sorry. I kept saying Greg Van Roten. It's Van Roten. I don't know why. I got maybe I need an extra cup of coffee so far today. I know his resume, but I got his name wrong. Sorry about that.
That's all right. But so anyways, I think that's going to be a battle. Again, I think Bars wins it, but I think it's going to be a battle that's fun to watch. Next, we're going to come into defensive end. Now, let's not pretend there's no battle with Max Crosby. In my opinion, and I'm going to be addressing this in a upcoming podcast this week. He is the best defensive lineman, defensive end in the NFL. And I know a lot of people say, what about this guy? What about that guy? I'm going to be addressing that later in the week, but he is there. No one's competing with him. Now, Max doesn't know that. Max literally thinks that his job is in jeopardy. I've never seen it. I mean, he just plays at such a high level. He always, that chip on the shoulder. Nobody wanted me as a recruit. Then I'm a late round draft pick in the NFL. Everything I've got to win is mine. So I love that mindset. But he's not in this conversation. But you got Malcolm Koonce, Chandler Jones, and Tyree Wilson battling for who's going to be that other starting defensive end. Now, make it real clear. Chandler Jones is the other starting defensive end, but he didn't have a good year last year. And there were times he was extremely productive in causing pressure, but he wasn't productive in the stat department. Malcolm Koonce, I thought last year, this staff didn't do him right. When Chandler was not producing, I think you saw some things from Koonce that I thought he deserved some more reps. Not hating on Chandler. Love him. Great guy, great player. I like him personally. But I think he's a Hall of Famer. But I just think it's about what are you doing for me right now? And then Tyree Wilson. To me, I think it's a battle. And I'm curious, when the season's over, who do you think is starting late in the year? Who do you think emerges from this group? Do you think it's Chandler Jones, the backup? Do you think it's Koonce finally getting an opportunity to get some real reps? Is it Wilson getting completely healthy and playing like he should play? What do you think?
I think that, obviously, ideally, I think that the best case scenario for the Raiders is by the end of the year, they're still on the hunt for a playoff chase. Chandler Jones is productive, and Tyree Wilson is working in there, and with Max Crosby, and those are your top three pass rushers, and they're all playing a lot. I anticipate, I think by the end of the year, whether Chandler Jones has a monster bounce back season or just kind of, one of his normal regular seasons, excuse me, I think Tyree Wilson's going to be in there playing the bulk of the reps by the end of the year, as long as he's healthy and he is he's progressing and feels comfortable playing that much, that big of a role that early in his career. You don't draft a guy in the top 10 to have him sit. You can bring him along a little slowly. You can, work him in with other guys, but you're not really bringing him into redshirt or to only play a small role. He's going to play a lot. Malcolm Koonce is fascinating because this is a third-round pick. So third-round picks are expected to contribute. He's going into his third season, and that's kind of a make-or-break time because only only 4-year rookie deals in the NFL. But if you're not really establishing yourself by your second season, third season, the latest, it's not looking great for you, at least with that team that drafted you. Mm-hmm. They're going to probably look to replace you. So I think in terms of the biggest sense of urgency, he probably has the most of that group because he has to prove something this year. Chandler Jones is, in his 30s, part of an elite career, possible Hall of Fame career. If he plays well this season, the Raiders can keep him around for 2024. If they don't see enough from him or they trust Tyree Wilson, they restructured his deal this offseason. They could get out of it before next year. Tyree Wilson obviously is the future, but, the Raiders have 4 or 5 years to work with him. So they know that, there's not that the pressure's not on him to perform right away. You want to leave a good first impression, but he doesn't have necessarily that I'm potentially fighting for my career type pressure that Malcolm Kuntz may have. So I think Malcolm Kuntz has the most to prove. I think that by the end of the year, if all goes well for the Raiders, maybe Chandler Jones is still starting with Tyree Wilson getting a lot of reps in relief or in different packages. But I do expect, I think more likely, Tyree Wilson's the starter by the end of the season.
Yeah, I agree with you. You don't bring a guy in at that position to get picked, that money, and again, my rule on rookies is I have no expectations in year one. I just don't. But you have to have expectations on first round guys and second round guys. Yeah, I will tell you this: I do not have the highest expectations for Tyree Wilson of all the other rookies in this class. Yeah, just because he's coming off of an injury. But I do at the end of the year expect him to be that other guy opposite of Max, starting and getting a lot of reps. Now, I want to go to another position because it's one that I find fascinating. It's tight end in the Josh McDaniels system. You got OJ Howard, who there's no argument. He has every physical God-given gift that you have to be great in this league. Power, speed, everything. His battle's been injury. And then you come along to Austin Hooper, who I think of the three right now is the best of the tight ends. I think he's super good. And then Michael Mayer, who I think I have the highest expectations of him of any rookie on this roster. I think he's a stud. He was a mid first round grade. The Raiders stole him in the second round. I think he's going to be exceptional. I think if Howard can get it together and stay healthy, the Raiders could have the best tight end core by the end of the year in all of the National Football League. But I think it's going to be a battle. I think Hooper comes in one. I think Mayer, if not week one, early in the season, is that second tight end until Howard proves his ability to stay healthy. But I think it's going to be a battle watching these three go at it. Your thoughts?
Should be a lot of fun for you guys out there to see that in camp. I expect from day one, two guys are going to play big roles early because, I mean, almost every team is utilizing two tight ends heavily these days. There's a lot of 12 personnel. Josh McDaniels is going to utilize two tight ends a lot coming from New England. I always feel like Austin Hooper, when throughout his run in the NFL, whether it was in Atlanta or Cleveland, kind of an underrated player. Not a spectacular tight end, not going to be the upper echelon types, like a Kelsey or a Waller or a Kittle, but a guy who's going to be productive in that kind of next group of tight ends, and a guy that you could do a lot of things with. I think as long as he stays healthy, he's going to be productive and he's going to be reliable and counted upon for the Raiders. Michael Mayer, I agree with you expectations wise. He's a guy who I think was one of the safest picks of the draft. I said it before the draft, before the Raiders even took him. I thought that people were kind of overthinking it with him. I think they were, he was so productive at Notre Dame. He was so consistent, exhibited the ability to do everything that you want from a tight end. I think he's a plug and play guy. He's going to be, a 10, 12-year contributor in the NFL. So I expect him to be, if he's not the starting tight end, a guy who's playing a lot right from the jump and is, living up to that draft status with the Raiders. And then OJ Howard's kind of like that wild card, like you said. He's a guy who has had a lot of, injuries in the past. His health has been an issue. When he's been on the field, he's shown flashes. There's a reason he was a first-round pick 6 years ago. Can they tap into some of that still? Obviously now a guy's getting into, his mid-late 20s, which is you're getting older for football years. It sounds crazy to say that, but, he's not a young pup anymore. So how much is he able to still contribute? How much is he able to stay in the field? I think all of that will factor into, what kind of a role he has for the Raiders this year.
I agree. Then last we come to safety. We know Marcus Epps, the guy's a superstar, and he's going to be a starter day one. There is no argument. Trayvon Moore, but who's going to be that other guy? Trayvon Moore, his rookie year, had a great rookie year. I talked to people all over the NFL that told me, because I always do guys who could take the next step. And going into last year, every team I talked to, oh, Trayvon Moore, Trayvon Moore, Trayvon Moore. He had a terrible last year. And so did Nate Hobbs. Now, Nate had an injury for part of the time, but Nate was never Nate. So to me, that rests on coaching when two of your players, there's an old adage, if one of your players is screwing up, it's on the player. If more than one's screwing up, it's on coaching. And because clearly they're not getting, I think the coaching last year struggled, specifically Chris Ash, his contribution as a defensive back coach. But there's Trayvon Moore. Jaquan Johnson is a defensive safety they brought in as a free agent. Roderick Teamers, a guy they've had around here, has played well at times, shown flashes. But this rookie, Chris Smith, out of Georgia, I'm high on him. I know he's not the biggest guy in the world. He's a headhunter. I really, really like him. Your thoughts? Who do you think emerges here and gets that other safety spot?
Well, again, you're talking about the year three, which is what we said from Malcolm Kuntz. Obviously, Trevon Morik has done more in the NFL than Malcolm Kuntz has, but what kind of player are you going to be? Uh, Year three is going to tell a lot. Are you the guy that looked like a, locked in starter, potential star as a rookie, or are you the guy that took a massive step or two back as second year player, and your spot, your first string spot is now in jeopardy? I would expect, I think, unless he really struggles in the preseason, you would think that he would start the season as the second starting safety. But listen, here's the thing. Again, we talked about this a couple of podcast episodes ago about the Raiders are in a position where they're looking to find guys who are going to be building blocks for the future and guys that you can count upon. If Trayvon Moore doesn't show that early on in the season, they're not going to hesitate to throw in some other guys at that spot. And I think that that's the right way to do it. And if, they have options with Jaquan Johnson, who's started to take a bigger role every year he was there at Buffalo. Roderick Teamer's been around, knows what he's capable of, knows what the staff wants of him. And now you have Chris Smith, who was viewed by many as a potential steal for where the Raiders took him in that draft. I think they could find, a lot of production there. I don't think they're going to throw him right into the fire right away. But I think that if he starts to show he's acclimated, he's ready to go, and Trayvon Moore slips, they won't hesitate to plug Chris Smith in and for a starting role or a bigger role earlier on.
It's going to be fascinating to me. I'm a huge Trayvon Moore guy. I'm a huge Trayvon Moore guy because I think last year had a lot to do with coaching. I know the risk. What's funny is when a team lets a player go, you really know when you're a journalist and you're plugged in, because you'll know how many teams are going to be circling around that guy, how many are going to want him. I'll give you an example. I think one of the biggest things that Josh McDaniels and Dave Ziegler did last year was letting Alex Leatherwood go, because they sent a memo to that entire locker room. We don't care if you're a first round pick in year two and it's going to cost our franchise a boatload of money. You're gone if you don't produce. I think that was the best thing they did personally. But when you look at them, I mean, there are NFL teams circling around. Hey, if they let Moore go, we believe in that kid. That kid's going to get a shot immediately somewhere else. And I think that tells you a lot about his value. When you got a guy, I knew talking to people. Now, first of all, I never thought they would get rid of Alex Leatherwood, because in the NFL, you never cut a first rounder going into year two. And I think it was a great move. I didn't think they would do it. But you knew there wasn't a lot of interest in him. And there wasn't. I mean, the Bears had nothing. So they were willing to take a gamble on him because they literally had nothing. But there were no other teams saying, "Ooh, we got to get that kid. We got to get that kid." But there are with Morik. There's a lot of people that like him. I think it's going to be fascinating. Obviously, Jaquan Johnson, I think, is a guy. If I had to guess, And I think if Morrig falters, that's who they plug in there at first. But I think Teamer could. But I think you're right. They're going to play Chris Smith slow. Watch what he does on special teams. Watch what he does in some certain packages. But there's a lot of high expectations for him inside those Raiders upstairs offices. All right, I want to get to my point though about Alex Leatherwood, about they sent a message to that locker room, and I think it was a good message. We don't care who you are. We don't care where you're drafted. We don't care how much money you're going to cost. We're going to play the best players. I think that was a big thing that Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels did. And quite frankly, I think it's going to make them better long term. Your thoughts?
I would agree. Again, you're starting to trying to establish a culture in your first year as regime. He wasn't one of their players. And in the NFL, one of the things that I've kind of noticed is you're gonna make mistakes. And then again, he wasn't one of their. They didn't draft him, so it wasn't like they made the mistake of taking him in the first round. But teams are going to make mistakes. General managers are going to make mistakes. Coaches, no one's going to bat 0. Oh, no one's batting 1,000. How quickly you're able to pivot and move off those mistakes and course correct and you know kind of eat your losses and move forward says a lot. And I think that that's really what they were trying to do. They said, listen, we didn't pick this guy where he was taken. He's not filling the role that, we would like to see him fill. He's not, doing what we want from him. So why would we subject ourselves to, another year or two of just the same thing of being, kind of let down and him not being a fit here, costing us money while we're wasting our time. We'd rather spend the money to get another and have another guy or two in there to fill that spot who maybe makes our team better. So I think that that's one of the things that you can't be afraid to do in the NFL. And I do think that was, a smart thing for them to do last year. Now we'll see, if you keep having to do that over and over, then it's a problem because then you made too many mistakes. You got too many guys in there that aren't, doing the job. But I think for a first year regime, for a player they didn't take, I thought it was a fine move.
Right now, next week when we come back, we're going to get into detail on the Raiders wide receivers. I think there's a lot to talk about there. A lot to talk about. And then we're going to really dig in. We've talked about tight ends today. So next week we're going to talk about receivers and corners. And I think there's that's going to be a long podcast, but I think it's going to be a good one. So I'm Hondo Carpenter from Sports Illustrated's Fan Nation, Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast, part of the Fans First Sports Network, along with my buddy, my friend, my colleague from thespun.com, the great Matt Halatic, with another week in the books. Happy 4th of July, everybody. Man, camp's just a few weeks away, Matt.
It is best time of the year.
Totally agree. We'll see you next time, everybody.